Bertemu kembali minggu ini adalah minggu yang boleh dikatakan sibuk untuk pasaran kewangan dengan pelaporan korporat dan juga angka-angka ekonomi termasuk KDNK suku keempat Amerika serta laporan daripada mesyuarat FOMC di Amerika untuk membincangkan perkara ini dan juga kesannya kepada pasaran dan juga ringgit. Kita bersama dengan Stephen Ines, Ketua Pakar Strategi Pasaran Global Axi. Stephen, hi, thank you for joining us. Stephen, now from the US we will get the Fed FOMC statement and rate decision, consumer confidence for January and the fourth quarter GDP. What can we expect from these numbers, seeing that the retail sales in December went down for the third month?
It's interesting. I think it's going to be kind of a gut check week for global investors, well, particularly on the U.S. market. But I think let's address the Fed first. I don't think they're going to rock the boat as far as policy is concerned. There's been a lot of discussions in the background about possible paper talk, but quite a significant pushback from the main primary voices on the FOMC. Right now, the market is siding with that view. We saw last week where we had fairly strong data in the U.S. to end the week. U.S. dollar didn't react, and neither did bond yields. Actually, bond yields fell. So this suggests that taper discussions, at least for the time being, are off the table. That's not to say they're not going to come again on the table, but we just got to keep an eye on how the markets react. Retail sales data, well, that's hardly a surprise. It was worse than expected, mind you, but that just magnifies how much of a crushing sentiment as far as the consumers are concerned that COVID and lockdowns are having. I think those types of data will turn around quite quickly. We've seen anecdotal and statistical evidence of as soon as lockdowns are removed, the economies return quickly back to normal. So I think the markets to a great degree will be willing to see through that. But yes, ultimately it's going to be how the Fed messaging is interpreted and whether the markets continue to believe that the Feds will continue to monetize debt and in effect suppress bond yields favorably for risk assets as we move through the week.
So currently there's no fear that the Fed will actually reduce the quantitative easing?
There's always that fear. I, for one, am fearful of it because, there's nothing written in stone when it comes to Fed policy. Look, if personal consumption expenditure index rises towards 3%, the Feds are going to pull back on QE. That's just the way things are in an orthodox world. The big issue here, and my concern, is that the Feds haven't actually factored in 1.9 trillion or anywhere about that number into their overall forward outlook. This is worrisome. Obviously, the more stimulus you put in the market, the higher the chances are inflation. And again, in the orthodox world, that leads to tighter monetary policy. I don't see how that's not going to happen. I think it's just a matter of timing. Right now, the market's pushed back that view from June, September, more towards September to December, but even some leaning back towards 2022. If those opinions get pushed up forward, then we're going to find ourselves dealing with higher yields. I don't think 1.5% 10-year yield is out of the question this year. And I think, and while I don't think it's going to be much of a cause for concern as far as the overall equity market's concerned, it's not really that big of a rise in yields, just getting back to where we were last year. My issue here is how the currency markets are going to react. Those have been wild cards this year. I get surprised at the U.S. dollar's resilience. So we're going to have to see how that plays out in the global markets.
Let's talk about the $1.9 trillion stimulus. President Biden has urged lawmakers to speed up the stimulus package and has announced various economic programs last week. Will this be enough to support market and the U.S. economy?
Oh, it's just an absolutely colossal amount, maybe even overkill as far as the stimulus is concerned. I think what's more important, however, for markets concerns is a more efficient rollout of the vaccines. Look, we're starting to see the ICU cases drop in the U.S. We're starting to see the curve sort of tempering a little bit. But more importantly here, the vaccine rollout has currently reached the administration's target. It's great. Trump leaves office and the administration takes over and they've reached their target. Now it's about overachieving, right? So we've got 1 million vaccinations getting done in the U.S. per day. How far can they overachieve? Can they get it to the 1.4 million? Can they get it to the 1.5? Or Colossally, can they get it to the 2 million? Absolutely unachievable. But the markets will continue to monitor the pace of vaccine rollout as the best indicator for how quickly we're going to ultimately reach herd immunity and how quickly the economic environment is going to recover.
Let's talk about corporate earnings this week, especially from tech companies expected this week. How will this affect markets in the US, and will investors finally see if their valuations is on spot?
I'm not sure, really. I mean, I don't know what the market looks at as far as valuation, because they're certainly overvalued, but people continue to buy tech stocks. What does that tell you? Well, that tells me that they think tech is going to be used dramatically more so going forward. Look at the semiconductor prices right now. They're just flying high. Of course, that's a little bit because of the automobile sector. And of course, that's also benefiting some of Malaysia's counters along the semiconductor and technology counters. But we have to realize this is a brave new world. Well, maybe not brave, but it's certainly a new world that we're entering here. And it's going to be totally engulfed with more technology than we've ever seen in our life. Over here in Asia, we should realize that, because everywhere we go, people are looking at their handhelds. That is the new wave of everything right now, and I think that's going to be contributing to the super cycle in technology as we move through the next 5 to 10 years, primarily around the G5 and what comes beyond G5.
And Stephen, this week we will hear announcements related to South Korea's fourth quarter GDP, Japan's core CPI, and also the China's industrial profit and PMI. Can we expect more upbeat numbers to come in?
Japan's a little bit worrisome because they're facing the the COVID situation. Korea has faced a COVID situation, but we have to keep in mind here when it comes to manufacturing. Manufacturing is very much automated these days, so there's not really that much of a lag. And basically, with manufacturing sort of depressed everywhere else except for the highly automated sectors in Asia, these economies continue to do quite well. We look at China, for instance. The manufacturing data continues to show really well. The big concern is really on the services side. That still hasn't completely recovered, and this is more of a concern that we're going to see going forward. Look, it would put a lot of stimulus behind this. The real key here to the recovery moving forward is going to be how the retail and consumer demand comes back. Obviously, we think it's going to be a huge liftoff right away once we get the lockdowns get lifted. But how does that filter through beyond the initial pent-up demand that we're expected to see? Will that continue? Well, that's the question mark. I think it's going to continue, but it may not accelerate. And will that be good or bad for stocks? That's when we reach that inflection point somewhere towards mid-year.
What top trends can we expect this week, leading up to the China's PMI numbers expected to be announced on this weekend?
I just see it very difficult for short selling strategies to take hold in this environment of, dual policy puts from the central banks and also the governments. They're continue to lavish the markets with lots of cash. I think the only strategy here is to buy on dip, and I think this is going to be the continual flavor of the day while policy caps remain on full flow. Of course, we're going to keep track of the COVID indicators, but the health community's really adapted well, and the rollout of these vaccines, while they've hit numerous stumbling blocks, I think these can be overcome. It's not like they're high hurdles; they're just sort of normal hurdles that we were expecting. Sure, there's some complications in getting the number of people vaccinated, but we learn lessons pretty quickly. In the healthcare community, the more power they get invested behind them, the more likely we're going to get more vaccination rollouts. This is unquestionably policy number one for policymakers throughout the world, is how quickly they can get these vaccines rolled out. People want them. Just roll them out to the people. That's going to be the big issue.
And speaking of vaccination, it's been more than a year since COVID-19 cluster was reported in China. China's economy has since recovered and registered a 2.3% growth in 2020. Tell us your thoughts on this journey so far, and looking at the numbers, COVID-19 cases is closer, or is getting close to about 100 million globally.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal recovery, stock market recovery we've gone through. It's just that now whether that phenomenal stock market recovery can be complemented by a phenomenal global economic recovery. Look, there's a lot of optimism, whether it's corporate earnings, whether it's economic data. It's a lot priced into the second half of 2021. My concern is that perhaps the level of optimism right now, everybody's bullish. I don't know anybody who's not bullish. Does the price actually reflect all that optimism? I say no. However, this tells me that people are concerned that we're not going to achieve those lofty goals that perhaps these valuations have set in sight. That's going to be a concern. But we look at how the healthcare community has reacted. Full force, they put so much money behind this force, not the healthcare community, but the governments. They've created a vaccine in months, which would normally take a decade to create. This is phenomenal. This is going to help. This will really get us out of the recovery. From my view, it's just a matter of time before we start, before I can start flying back down to KL again. Fingers crossed it's going to happen, before summer. But, we're all sitting here with hope, legs and fingers crossed that the vaccines are going to roll out and everything's going to return to normal a lot quicker than perhaps a lot of people think.
And crude inventories have increased in the U.S. Last week by 4.4 million barrels. At the same time, COVID-19 cases have reappeared in China with 103 new infections, the 11th day with more than 100 confirmed infections. France probably need to move into a third lockdown, perhaps as early as February. Tell us, will these factors, will this new news affect oil prices?
Well, dealing with the European situation, the markets wrote down global demand to start the year because of the extended lockdowns in Europe. They had to go back to the revision drawing board because of the China situation. However, it appears that OPEC, or at least Saudi Arabia, had a crystal ball outlook here by cutting production 1 million barrels per day for February and March. This is great. This should alleviate those demand concern worries to a degree. And really help bridge the gap, so to speak, until when the vaccines roll out and we can return to some sort of normal consumption habits. But yeah, it's going to be a bumpy road for oil prices. It's not a clear shoot up. It's going to be bumpy, but we also have to remember it's really tangential to the vaccine rollouts. Again, I hate always harping back to these vaccine rollouts, but they are so significantly important for the markets. It's hard not to talk about them all the time. So we really, really have to keep focus on how the vaccine rollouts, because ultimately, when the vaccine rolls out to everybody, we can fly again, and that's when oil prices are going to fly. When that happens is the big question. In the meantime, I think that buy on dip narrative continues to resonate as we continue to see the gravitational pull of 55 barrel on Brent continue to pull investors back in, as that remains a real anchor price for oil prices going forward.
But that $55 per barrel, how do you make sure that it remains stable at that particular price?
It's just because investors look at the fair market value. It's just a mathematical equation. It's nothing complex here. That's just where the supply and demand, because of the OPEC production curtailments, along with the U.S. curtailments. Those are unforced curtailments. Given the relative demand throughout the world, dictates that the fair value price for Brent is at $55, and that's why we continue to see that back. The big point in the conversation, however, it's an intervened market. If we didn't have OPEC curtailing production on a forced basis, and if we didn't have the unforced curtailment in U.S. shale, oil prices would be significantly lower. So what does this tell you? Well, on the supply side, the biggest threat to the view are those ramping up of production. So when oil prices go up, there's going to be more pressure for shale to ramp up, and there's going to be more pressure from even OPEC themselves to ramp up. All the smaller producers will want to produce more to take advantage of higher prices. This ultimately, in my view, is going to be the rally capper for oil prices. So while I see oil prices rising, I don't think they're going to rise anywhere towards a super cycle level. I think $65 in Brent likely going to be about it for 2021.
And how do you think these factors mentioned earlier, FOMC and oil, will affect ringgit as we move forward this week?
There was a bit of a scare because of the Lunar New Year effect across Asia currency. The Lunar New Year effect from China affecting all of Asia FX last week. We're looking at Hong Kong as moving out of that lockdown. That's the stage of some of investors' fears that China will not move back into that so-called COVID lockdown abyss. The markets are floating a little bit more. Ultimately, when you have a weak with the FOMC on tap, currency traders are a little bit more hesitant. I think the path of least resistance is stronger for the ringgit because I expect higher oil prices. I expect the Chinese economy continue to outperform. So things look good. It's just a matter of time before the ringgit does eventually break that 4.0 level and perhaps moves towards 380, which is my year-end target. But fingers crossed. Things have to work out, on a lot of factors. Stars have to align on the vaccine rollout front. Stars have to align that we don't have a super resurgent of COVID, and ultimately stars have to align that the Feds don't raise or don't start moving tapering quicker than the market has in their current forecast right now.
And Stephen, if you can hear birds singing and also babies crying, it's because we're still working from home, and the government has extended the MCO until the 4th of February. Has this affected ringgit? Did you see this has adversely or perhaps affected ringgit last week?
Yeah, it did, but I think it's more of the external factors. I think looking at how Malaysian economy and how consumers reacted to the lifting of the initial MCO is quite vibrant, and I expect the markets are pricing in the fact that once the MCOs get dropped, vitality will return to to Kuala Lumpur again, and that's just the way it is. So I think the market, to a degree, is looking through the MCOs. Of course, it hurts the view because it's going to have a negative input by extending the recovery a little bit longer. But currency markets have a way of looking forward as opposed to looking back. So I think while that's certainly in their purview, it's not a major negative for the ringgit going forward.
On that note, we thank you very much, Stephen Ines, Ketua Strategi Pasaran Global Axis, membincangkan berkenaan dengan pelbagai faktor pasaran yang dijangka minggu ini susulan daripada pengumuman FOMC yang dijangka pada minggu ini, GDP Amerika ataupun KDNK Amerika Syarikat pada suku keempat PMI China dan juga faktor-faktor yang mempengaruhi ringgit pada minggu ini. Dan teruskan bersama kami di Astro Awani ketika kami membincangkan lagi berkenaan dengan PKP dan kesannya kepada ekonomi dan juga kepada hidup anda di luar sana. Saya Rizal Zulkapi, teruskan menonton Astro Awani, berita segenap dimensi. Salam hormat.